All right, here we are. Back where it all began, walking along the hike and bike trail. That's Ladybird Lake over my left shoulder, and that's downtown Austin.
And that is Keith Maitland.
That's me.
And I am Ben Steinbauer.
That's him.
And we are on a walk here, as Keith said, around downtown Austin, Post-Sundance, where I got very, very sick.
Ben got sick. I got sick.
You know, and I think we got sick at the same time because we were at all the same parties, and then we commuted together to the airport in a small car. And the interesting thing, though, is that Sally O'Grady, who was there with us, did not get sick.
Did Amy get sick? Amy Bench?
And I don't think Amy got sick.
Did Osei Essed get sick?
I don't think Osei got sick.
Did Conan O'Brien get sick?
Well, he's been sick.
Well, he was sick of us. So. Only took 1 second for that to set in.
I see what you did there. I like it.
On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith.
Let me tell you one of my favorite things about going to Sundance, and this is the best part about it. You don't even have to go to Sundance to do this.
What, get sick?
If you take a look at who's going to be at Sundance, producers, distributors, financiers, and you reach out kind of last minute, say 4 days before the festival kicks off, and you send them a little note that says, hey, saw you're going to be in Park City, I'm going to be in Park City too, should we meet for a coffee? Almost 100% of those people will say no because they are already too busy with their tight packed schedules. They'll say, you know what, I'm pretty busy, I'm sure I'll bump into you there, but let's set a Zoom for next week.
Ah, interesting. So do you have a lot of Zooms that
I am,
were
yeah,
scheduled?
I'm going to be Zooming up the next 2 weeks, really. I use Sundance as an opportunity to kind of reconnect with some financiers. I met with an agent who reps a subject I'm looking at.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
And, but yeah, my dance card is getting locked in for the next couple weeks.
That's a fantastic use of Sundance, and also, one might argue, a great segue into what we're going to talk about today.
What has that been?
I'm so glad you asked, Keith. It's inspired by Diane Quon. We are going to talk about the importance of reaching out to other filmmakers, getting advice.
Advice often tastes better in the mouth than it tastes in the ear, a wise man once said.
Is that a thing? I haven't heard that saying.
I think I wrote that in a script once a long time ago. But
now
I can't remember if I got that out of like a book of quotes or I made that quote up myself.
What does that quote mean? It sounds a little gross.
Tastes better in the mouth than it tastes in the ear. The advice giver, I think, sometimes enjoys advice more than the advice hearer.
I see.
Is that what that means?
I see. Okay. Yeah, that interpretation makes more sense. Yes.
Back at Sundance, we had a nice long-form chat with Diane Quon, and she told us that when she was getting started, the first thing she did was send off an email to a filmmaker that inspired her. And that was Morgan Neville with 20 Feet from Stardom.
Yep.
And she just said, hey, Morgan, you don't know me. I'm getting started as a documentary producer, kind of late in life, and I could use some advice on how to get the ball rolling.
And miraculously, he wrote her back a very thoughtful email. And I say miraculous because he's a guy who's winning Oscars. He's juggling multiple projects. He's working with celebrities. You would think that somebody at his level might not take the time to respond to an email from an aspiring filmmaker looking for advice. And it's heartwarming and encouraging to hear that he did respond, and he responded thoughtfully.
Yeah, it was Morgan's response that spurred Diane on.
And then she went on to produce an Academy Award nominated documentary that helped the director deal with his grief and moved a lot of the audience who saw it. So, you know, what you hear about, like a butterfly's wings making ripples that then affect lots of other things. And that's, to me, a great example of the power of documentary, the power of community, which we were going to talk about today.
Well, listening to Diane talk about her outreach made me wonder, Ben, about you. And was there a time that you can recall reaching out for advice?
Absolutely.
And how did it go?
Well, so when I was an undergraduate at the University of Kansas, I was studying film after being a creative writing major, and I had no idea how to get started. I mean, me coming from Kansas, where I was born, and Oklahoma, where I was raised, I knew no one who was a filmmaker. And, choosing to do that job was almost like saying I wanted to be an astronaut or something. Like, it just didn't feel possible. And so one of my professors at KU recommended that we reach out to people that we admire, other filmmakers whose work we might want to make something like. And I wrote to 3 directors. I wrote to Albert Maysles, I wrote to Ross McElwee, and I wrote to Les Blank. And that right there shows you my sort of love of sort of indie documentary.
Yeah.
And so they all 3 wrote me back. And for me in my early 20s, it was really inspiring and motivating. And I got a camera and I went out and I made my first documentary. And I remember Albert Maysles said that the thing that I should do is find a subject that I had access to and to film that person with love in my heart. To basically love my subject and give them the opportunity to show their best self. And then Ross McElwee wrote me this very poetic postcard, which essentially said, he quoted Wordsworth, and he said, "The edge of meaning never lies far from personal experience." Meaning, make a film about something you have access to, something that you know well, something that is going on with you in your life. And as big a fan as I am of Les Blank, and I would go on to meet him years later, I don't actually remember what he what he said back to me. But I do know that he responded on Flower Films letterhead, and I do have it in a notebook, but I can't recall what exactly he said. But those 3 people did respond, and and I've always remembered that. And so anytime somebody reaches out to me and asking for advice, I make sure to take the time to respond.
I love what Albert Maysles has to say there, and the idea of treating your subject with love, loving your subject, building empathy, finding common ground. In a sense, I think it's baked into the concept of wanting to point a camera at somebody, but it's easy to forget that sometimes.
Absolutely, especially when you're thinking about what's fundable, how do I make money, what will my agent be able to take around town and get companies interested in financing. It's, it can very quickly tip over into more of a financial consideration, and it's important to keep, for me at least, to remember what it is that motivated me to start making documentaries in the first place. And here, we should stop and get a picture of where we are right now. This is incredibly beautiful. This is downtown Austin, and we are right here on the hike and bike trail in front of the pontoon party boats that you can rent to take out for your next bachelorette party, or maybe the next Dock Walks
Creative colloquium on the lake.
There we go. There we go. I was going to say, what do you call those at work, where you go out and you bond and you do trust falls and you...
People with jobs know the answer to that question. I've never had that. We did have a Go Valley company picnic recently.
A company retreat. That's what I'm looking for.
All right, so Albert Maysles' advice is easy to take to heart, exciting to implement, can be challenging when your subject halfway through the process maybe isn't giving you what you thought they were going to give you, or isn't cooperating with your shoot schedule, or throwing some curveballs at you.
But the thing about documentary, which I know you know, is that you give up so much control if you're doing it right, in my opinion, because the story presents itself to you at a certain point. Like, you can try to wrestle it into the form you think it should take, but ultimately you're a gardener and not a carpenter, where you let the story sort of blossom, the character kind of lead where the story's going instead of trying to hammer them into a narrative. And that's how I've always approached films, and I love movies that take me for a ride as an audience member, and I always aspire to do that in any movie I make.
You're a gardener, not a carpenter.
Not a carpenter.
My work has a fair amount of carpentry in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some structural decision making and some scaffolding that's often built to create creative boundaries. But I think you're absolutely right. You're cultivating a garden, right? You're planting seeds and then watching them grow. You're watering some and weeding others. Where are we at here, Ben?
We are walking underneath what is known as the Bat Bridge.
The Bat
which
Bridge.
is where all of the bats live and fly out at sundown, and tourists come to stand on top of this bridge to watch all the bats fly into the sunset to go and eat mosquitoes, hopefully. And here we are, we're walking the trail right underneath this iconic Congress Street Bridge here in Austin.
This is a perfect opportunity for me to announce a project that I am working on, we've never talked about before.
No.
I'm not in the role of the director on this one. I'm a creative consultant, and my company is providing some services. And I think there's a chance I'll be doing some second unit directing on some recreations. But I am working with filmmaker Skip Hobby to make the definitive Austin Bats documentary.
No way.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, Skip Hobby is the world's greatest bat photographer. He is a cinematographer who has been shooting with dozens of types of bats on multiple continents for National Geographic for years.
Wow. Speaking of having love in your heart for something that you film, this guy must clearly love bats in order to go all over the world filming them.
Yeah, so Skip Hobby has been camped out underneath that bridge, filming the bats as they emerge from their sleep each night at dusk. He shoots on a Phantom, at 500 frames a second.
Wow.
The footage is just outstanding. Working with Hillary Pierce, who was a supervising producer on a couple of my films a few years ago, has been working with Maisie Crow on her films and Ben Masters on his films. And that's a project that began just a year ago at the Stuck On Wisteria party, where somebody introduced Skip to me and he asked if he could ask for some advice.
Wow. And so through giving advice to an aspiring filmmaker, or in this case, a pretty established cinematographer, it sounds like, you got to get involved with the project yourself.
He wanted to get together and talk about story, talk about bringing the past into the present, as far as turning back the hands of time through archival footage, potentially recreation, potentially animation, all the different kind of tools at our disposal. And what started out and could have just easily been, one coffee between colleagues has turned into a collaboration and a friendship and a project I'm really excited about, because the story of the bats who live under the Congress Avenue Bridge is a great story, and it's one of the best stories of our town.
That's awesome.
Okay, we have found ourselves just east of downtown, on the south side of Lady Bird Lake, on the relatively new floating boardwalk section of the trail. This feels like the perfect place to do a little something Ben likes to call Circle of Confusion. Are you ready, Ben?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Circle of Confusion, and begin. You got to do it too.
Oh, I have to do it too?
I mean, it's only confusing if both windows are going at the same time.
Oh, okay. All right, here we go. Let's not get hit by a jogger. Circle of Confusion. Whoa, I'm getting
Form,
dizzy.
function, storytelling, all mixed up in a blender.
What are we doing?
Turning off the audience, undoubtedly.
Making Ben very dizzy. Oh, Circle of Confusion is gonna make me barf over the railing.
That's a different segment of the show.
Tell me a story about you reaching out to somebody when you were first starting. How did that go?
When I was getting started, I knew I wanted to make a documentary. And I was fortunate enough to meet this woman here in Austin. I was living in New York, but I met her in Austin. Her name is Lisa McWilliams, and she ran the Mobile Film School. I asked her if she had any advice for getting started. And she suggested two things. She said, look at ITVS, go to their website, the independent television service, and take a look at their open call. This is a major grant for independent filmmakers, documentary filmmakers who want to get their work shown on PBS. They have one of the most complicated application processes out there, and it covers kind of all the bases of everything you need to know about your project to get other people excited about it. So even if you don't apply, just familiarizing yourself with the requirements of that process
Forces you to think through
It's a big step forward.
Yeah, your movie in a way that you probably aren't doing up to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the second thing she suggested was go to Hot Docs and sit in on the Toronto Documentary Forum, which is a pitch forum,
Yeah.
to see what a real pitch looks like. Because that's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. But the way it worked is that, kind of a selected group of filmmakers who were already at least 20% funded on their film, which is a big hurdle to overcome, were presenting their work in front of an audience to a panel of basically American Idol judges who were the commissioning editors of international documentary sales,
Right.
which at the time was BBC, Arte, ZDF, PBS. And so these are these two pillars of functional advice that Lisa gave me was look at ITVS, the independent television service, as kind of a foundational grant application that would cover all the bases and ask you all the questions, and go to a pitch forum, especially a pitch forum at a high level, and see how other filmmakers are presenting their work.
Which is great advice. So did you take it?
I took both of those. Yeah, I mean, I applied for ITVS, and I didn't get it, and I reapplied 6 months later, and I didn't get it.
Yep.
And 6 months after that, I reapplied, and I'm not sure if I got it, but 6 months after that, I think is when I got it. I think it took 4 cycles, and with each of those applications came a feedback session, and that's one of the things I also love about ITVS.
Interesting.
So
they said, we're not going to give you the grant, but
and here's why.
here's why.
Here's why, and here's what you could do to be more attractive next time, because we definitely want you to resubmit.
We're talking about advice that we were given. Let's talk about advice that we give. So we are in about the midpoint of our careers, and I think it's fair to say we both have people reaching out to us who are young, aspiring filmmakers looking for advice.
Yeah.
Knowing that we got such pivotal advice early on from people we admired, how do you approach giving advice to young filmmakers? Like, what do you say when somebody comes up and asks you how to get started?
You want advice to be helpful, and you want it to be constructive, and you want to move the conversation forward for the person you're talking to. I love to meet with other filmmakers, and I love to find out what people are up to, what projects are going on. And I think usually my advice is spurred off of asking questions around that. What are you trying to say? Where are you trying to land? Who are you trying to connect with?
So you're going for practical, how can I be of most use to you, sort of boots on the ground, nuts and bolts.
I think that's what's missing. There's a million books on productivity. There's a million books on self-help.
Yeah.
There's a million fortune cookie, kind of bits of direction you can give somebody that say, be smarter, be better, be more connected.
Right.
And those are all helpful from a big picture point of view. But when you're just getting started, what is a fiscal sponsor?
Right. Okay.
How do I apply for a grant when it says you have to be a nonprofit? I'm not a nonprofit. Do I have to start a nonprofit?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with somebody making a first film who just can't figure out how to convert a donation that their uncle is willing to make for $1,500 into time spent on the film. And so what is a fiscal sponsor? That's a pretty good place to start with a brand new filmmaker.
Yeah, that's great. And see, I think we differ here because I go for much more of the rah, you can do it, this is important work, keep it up, kind of reason to do it, I think, is what and it's funny, I think like we probably give advice based on what we need, right? Like your quote from earlier, like advice tastes better in the mouth and sounds in the ear. I'm probably saying to the people who ask me a version of what I need to hear in that moment, in a way.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I appreciate it. And if you need that rah-rah, know that I'm here for you because you can do it.
Oh, thank you, Keith. See, and I should just be getting my affirmations from you.
I mean, I could text you every morning if you'd like. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's great to get. And we all need that boost.
Yeah.
And I think I'm agreeing with you. Like, oftentimes what I need, you know, even today and every day, no matter what point in my career I'm in, is like a clear next move that will actually move the rock up the hill, you know, a foot or two.
Right.
And oftentimes I know what that next move is, but I don't feel like it is the next move. And so getting somebody else to say, make that phone call, reach out to that funder, set that meeting,
Yep.
you know, ask for advice. I'll tell you, like, one piece of advice I got a long time ago, and I don't remember who gave it to me, but I've repeated it a lot, is if you want advice, ask for money.
Yep.
And if you want money, ask for advice.
Yep. I've heard that a lot too. That personally hasn't served me because I don't fully understand how to apply it. So how do you think about that?
Well, I think it's only half true. I think if you want advice, ask for money is totally true. If you ask someone for money, they're going to tell you what you need to do to make your project better, different, stand out.
So in other words, like if you get money from somebody, they are going to have notes and want to be creatively involved.
I think oftentimes they're going to give you advice and not money.
Okay.
And I think that's the point of the line is like, if you want advice, ask for money, because that's what you're going to get. You're going to get advice.
Gotcha.
If you want money, ask for advice. I think it's about cultivating relationships, right? And it's about letting somebody know, I'm not coming at you just to get into your pocketbook. I'm coming at you because I appreciate and trust your point of view.
Right. So I'm looking at you as a collaborator and not just as a financier that I can.
Right. And I think especially when you're getting started. Okay, here's a piece of advice I think it serves that. It's something that ITVS required of me on my first film, which is put together a board of advisors. And what the idea there was, you don't need 5 filmmakers who are going to tell you how to make movies, but one filmmaker that you could call and say, I'm in a bind, I'm painted into a corner, I'm not sure what to do. That would be helpful. One subject expert who really knew the world that you were planning on kind of injecting yourself into that could help you navigate that community. Sometimes it's just about buckling down and filling out the application.
Right.
You know, why are you the person to make this film? Why is now the time to make this film? Who is the audience for this film?
Well, and it's not just ITVS. That's every pitch I've ever done. An executive will ask, why now? Why does this film need to be made? And like you said, why are you the person to do it? And that, no matter where you are in your career, you have to answer those questions. And it's best to think about them as early as possible. And one thing I want to say about you meeting with prospective filmmakers or people who are looking for advice, I should say aspiring filmmakers, not prospective. But I'm reading this book right now by George Raveling, and it's called What You're Made For. And he is a college basketball coach who had a storied career. He meant a lot to a lot of professional athletes, like Michael Jordan writes the foreword. And one of his core principles is the idea of what he calls planting flowers. And he worked in basketball, and that world gets smaller as you continue in your career. And I feel like documentary film is the same way, where, you know, fewer and fewer people do it the longer you do it. And so it's important to treat your community well. And what he means by that is that you are going out of your way to be kind to everybody that you interact with, because planting those flowers, those like seeds of hope and beauty, do nothing but improve your quality of life. At the very least, you get to notice beautiful the results of your seeds that you've planted. Or at the very best, like your story, you get to get involved with some of these people. They go on to be collaborators or lifelong friends. And so it's really, he's making the point that it's really important to take the time to extend that courtesy to people, not just to help them, but that it comes back around and ends up making your life much richer and fuller and better as a result.
He is a gardener and not carpenter.
Hey, look at that. Way to bring it back around.
I second and third everything that George Raveling has to say in that. And like I said, I just want to admit, like, I don't always get it right. Sometimes I've spoken a little too bluntly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've insinuated too much of my own point of view or my own directing point of view, certainly my creative point of view, onto somebody else's idea.
Right.
And I don't do that with the intention of usurping their expression. I do that kind of out of fervor for the idea oftentimes. Oftentimes I see...
Like you get excited and you're like, you should do this. Yeah, you tell them the way that you would do it.
Yeah, I'm hungry for narrative at all times, like I love a good story.
Right.
And so I do try and temper that. Like, I have to remember that though. So that's advice I give myself before I go into. I just got a text the other day from UT, I think he's a freshman. He is the son of a high school friend's neighbor. So not much of a connection, between us.
Right.
But they asked, is it okay if I share your contact info? He wants to know, how can he be a writer-director in this world? And if, going to UT for 4 years studying RTF is a good idea.
Yep.
And
what'd you say?
Well, I said I'd meet with the kid. I haven't met him yet. So I got the text from him just the other day. We're going to have coffee in a couple days.
But see, even the fact that you're willing to do that is very generous.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it because, what'll happen is I'll sit across the table from him, and undoubtedly I will get excited about the ideas that make him excited.
Yeah.
And I will see something of myself.
That's what I was going to say, that you'll sort of like draft off his enthusiasm. And I remember teaching that was like, when I taught undergrad film students for a while, that's what I got out of it too, is their enthusiasm is infectious. And then you get excited and it reminds you of like why you wanted to, or at least why I wanted to make films in the first place.
Well, I think you made a really good point a moment ago. Like, the advice that we give is often the advice we need to hear.
Yeah.
And so every time I have a chance to meet an emerging filmmaker, an up-and-comer, or just a colleague, on equal footing as myself, and just talk about the work, talk about the world, I come out of it renewed.
Yeah, I remember when I was first starting out and I was an undergrad at the University of Kansas, this happened multiple times where we would have a guest speaker come into one of our classes, and oftentimes they were a director whose films we just watched or the professor was friends with. And this person would come in and they would say, I'm a working professional, and how many of you here want to be directors? And everybody would raise their hand.
I know right where this is going.
Right? We've all had this happen. And this happened multiple times as an undergraduate. And
Look around the room.
Yeah, and then they would say something like, only 3 of you will end up being directors out of, 50, 60, sometimes 100 kids in the class. And I remember how deflating that felt, and feeling like, what's the point in doing that? Like, I know that probably to them, they felt like they were giving us like tough love and encouraging us along these sort of practical lines where instead of being a director, if you learn to be a sound mixer, then, you will work more often or have a more secure career. But what that served to do was like irritate me and motivate me forward, because it kind of angered me. And so I always remembered that feeling. And when I taught, I would do the exact opposite. I would say, everybody in this class for this semester is a director, and I'm going to treat you that way, and I'm going to take you seriously, and we are going to make films together. And this is your opportunity to be a director and to not just dream about it, but to actually do it. And I feel like when I give advice, it's kind of in that same spirit.
I want to be in that class. Like, I do. There is so much to be said for building somebody up, right? And for taking away the obstacles, especially in an academic kind of educational environment, and saying, this is the moment This is a moment where all that matters is that you express yourself and that you try new things. You get knocked down and then you get up again.
Because we know this is hard to do. Like, there's a lot of competition. This is full of heartbreak, where you feel like, oh, I'm so close and this is about to get made, and then it doesn't get made, or you have to, put it on the shelf for a year, or somebody beats you to the idea. There's so many ways that, this type of work is hard. And so I think it's way more valuable to encourage people to do it and to keep going and to fight the fight than it is to point out how hard it is.
That's right. Well, let's get practical here at the end.
Okay, let's do it.
Some approaches you can take to seeking advice if you are new to filmmaking or new to a community of filmmakers.
Yep.
Trying to break in.
So if you want to make films, you have undoubtedly been inspired by films that already exist. Do research about that director. Nowadays, it's very easy to find people's contact information or ways to get in touch with them, and write a thoughtful email. Don't toss something off. Write something that is intentional, that you take time doing, that is considerate of their time, because we're all busy people. If you do that, 9 times out of 10, the person will respond. What about you? What advice would you give to somebody starting out and looking for advice?
I think that's great advice. I think, taking a more in-person approach could work. If you are new to filmmaking, one of the best things you could do is go to a big festival and buy a badge. Ask your folks for that for Christmas if you need to, or squirrel away the $200 to $600 it can cost at one of the bigger fests. But if you have a badge, many festivals offer one-on-one advice sessions. South by certainly does. Austin Film Festival also does. I know up in Hot Springs they have a new festival with a pitch forum that people can attend. New Orleans Film Festival has a pitch forum. There are pitch forums around the country called Good Pitch.
So your advice, I like that, is to go in person and go get inspired by films, and also try to meet the directors that you like there.
I think going to screenings where the directors are giving Q&As and sitting in the room with the director answering questions. Going in person, I think, can make all the difference. And sitting across the table from somebody, at South by, at these roundtables, I'm sure you've done the mentorship roundtable.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I've done it probably 5 or 6 times as a mentor. And each time it's like speed dating. You get 20 minutes with the people across the table from you. You get 6 of them maybe.
Yep.
And every time I've done it, at least one of those people has become someone that I've stayed in touch with.
And I've noticed that about you. When we run into people, like at Sundance, for example, you have helped lots of other filmmakers, and they remember you, and they thank you for that. And that's something that I really admire about the way that you work.
I appreciate you saying that. I just look at it as community building, and when people reach out, because they don't reach out because they think I'm a nice guy or smart or anything. They reach out because they like the work that I've made, and they want to figure out how to get their work seen. Yeah. And it starts off as a great bit of flattery, but it ends up as an opportunity, like what we're talking about, to advance my own understanding, my own career. Yeah. So selfishly, when I talk to those folks, I'm helping them maybe, but I know I'm helping myself too.
You're planting flowers, as George Raveling would say. And I think that's a great natural segue to end our episode. And look where we are. We're right back where we started here on the Lamar Street footbridge with a beautiful view of downtown Austin.
I'd like to, point some attention right there where it says, "Never give up."
Wow.
And over there, where it says, "Toe flop."
I'm not sure what one has to do with the other, but I like the sentiment of both. And I love living here in Austin. I love recording this podcast with you. Thank you, Keith Maysles.
Thank you, Ben Steinbauer.
Let's cut.
And cutting. For Go Valley, I'm Keith Maitland.
And for The Bear, I'm Ben Steinbauer. And we've got a musician here on the street. All right.
Next time on Dock Walks,
We are going to explore the film festival in our hometown, South by Southwest.
We've got some long-form interviews booked with some South by filmmakers. And I think the first one up in the hopper is your friend and someone I'm looking forward to getting to know and to hearing about his process, and that is Adam Bala-Low.
That's right. He is probably most well known for his latest doc series, Telemarketers, which was on HBO. And he's coming to South by with a new feature documentary called Deep Faking Sam Altman.
So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us. I hope you'll stick around for the next episode. South by Southwest, we'll have several episodes from South by. And as always,
you're Keith. I'm
you're
Ben. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Follow us at DocWalksPod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.